Hello and welcome to UPfront on JoyNews channel, and thank you very much for joining us today. So it's been a day of press conferences, of course. I mean, from the Minister of Information's press conference about COVID-19 to the NDC's 2 p.m. press conference on matters relating to the Electoral Commission, the compilation of a new voters register, and the usage of Ghana card. Well, according to the NDC, they think that this is not the best of things to do because about 10.2 million Ghanaians, if we're going to use only the National Identification Authority or the Ghana card, we're going to be disenfranchised or stood a chance of not being able to register. Of course, they've also raised issues concerning the usage of passport because the CI says you should use a passport of the Republic of Ghana or your Ghana card to register for the new voters register. Then after the NDC's press conference, the NPP at 4 p.m. also held a press conference addressed by its campaign manager for the 2020 elections, Peter McMenu. So today, we're finding out. For once, for many of you, you thought that we're dealing with the fight against COVID-19, and so the political parties and the politicians would actually allow us to, look at ways of dealing with COVID-19. Well, that was not to be, because today we've had the two main political parties, in other words, squaring it out over who is influencing the Electoral Commission or the need for the compilation of a new voters register. I'm Winston Amoa, and this evening we'll be joined by the Member of Parliament for Adenta and Director of Communications of the NPP, Yabo Abiasam. We'll also be hearing from Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Peter Otukono. Before we get into the discussion, let's start off by listening and watching the NDC's press conference today.
A sworn oath option, which per best practice is supposed to be employed to register a very small percentage, normally around 5% of the population who do not have any form of identification, could cure the problem we had foreseen. As predicted, the Ghana card registration process by the NIA has been very slow, such that till date, the process, which commenced with a pilot late in 2017 and was supposed to be completed in 1 year, has been able to register only 11,062,055 out of the estimated 19 million Ghanaians who are 15 years and above, who are eligible to be registered. Even more bizarre is the fact that out of the 11 million Ghanaians who have been registered, only 7,074,048 have been issued with cards per NIA's own website as it was obtained as at 2nd May 2020. You go to the NIA website and the indications are that out of the 11 million who have been registered, only 7 million out of it have been given cards. In spite of several assurances made in Parliament and in the media by the President, the head of the NIA, the Electoral Commission, that the Ghana card is not going to be used for the 2020 elections, the government and the Commission are currently pushing a legislation in Parliament to make the Ghana card and Ghanaian passport the main breeder document for registration as a voter, thus excluding the use of the Commission's own existing voter ID card. And sometimes I wonder why the Commission, which itself introduced this voter ID card, took us through all the processes. And today when you go to the banks, they even have more confidence in the voter ID card than any other card that you present. It beats my imagination why the Commission itself is rejecting a card they themselves have gone through a very laborious process and time-tested process in issuing to Ghanaians.
All right, so that's the chairman of the NDC, that's Samuel Ofosompo, they're talking about how he believes that, it is not the best if a lot of Ghanaians are going to stand the chance of not being able to register, because he makes the case that actually in meetings with the Electoral Commission, it was agreed that you can actually use your existing voters register to actually get to, the registration centers, and then you're allowed to register. Unfortunately, when the CI was sent to Parliament, it says passport and the Ghana card. And for those who do not have these two, They then would have to go to the Commission of Oaths, swear an affidavit, and then be able to justify that they're Ghanaians and giving a chance to register. This, he believes, would disenfranchise some people. Well, 2 hours after they held their press conference, the NPP responded in a press conference addressed by its 2020 campaign manager, Peter McMahon. All right, so we'll bring you, the NPP's reaction to the NDC's press conference. This is UPfront on JoyNews channel. I'm Winston Amwa. We'll go for a short break, but before we go for the break, so we have that particular video ready. Let's just go watch the NPP's reaction to the NDC's press conference.
For chaos, disunity, and fear. They are doing this because they do not have a good candidate and a good story to tell the voters in December. It is on record. It is that record of a rigged leadership under John Dramani Mahama that the NDC must be afraid of bringing back to face the Ghanaian people for their votes, and not the fake conspiracy to rig elections against them. NDC must be reminded that the NPP, as an opposition party, beat the NDC in 2016, and by the largest margin ever in Ghana's history, against an incumbent president in Ghana's history. It is not the fault of any Ghanaian that the NDC chose to bring back as their presidential candidate for 2020 the very man whose hands the NDC suffered their biggest defeat in history. It is not the fault of NPP that the NDC chose to bring back as their 2020 presidential candidate the very same man who gave Ghana the worst economic growth performance since 1994. It is not the fault of President Akufo-Addo that the NDC has very little confidence in their own chosen candidate for the 2020 elections in the person of John Mahama. We do not need the EC to rig an election in our favor. A government that has put 1.3 million children to school, who, if NDC was in power, would be on the streets, does not need an election to be rigged in its favor. A government that has restored industry and is creating jobs for the people does not need an election to be rigged in its favor. A government that has put 100,000 unemployed graduates to work does not need an election to be rigged in its favor. A government that has put the interests of the ordinary Ghanaian first, whether it is protecting money of millions of depositors or absorbing the cost of electricity and water of 30 million Ghanaians to ease the suffering of the people when there is a crisis, such a government does not need an election to be rigged in its favor.
All right, so that's campaign manager for NPP in the 2020 elections, Peter McMahon, there responding to the points made by the NDC during their press conference held earlier today. We go for a short break. When we return after the break, I'll be introducing my guest. Of course, Yabo Abingasama is in studio with us. Peter Boama Otokono joins us via Zoom, and then the deliberation starts. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, so welcome back from that short break, and thank you very much for staying with us here on UPfront. And I'll be joined by a member of Parliament for Adenta constituency and the Communication Director of the NPP, Yabo Abingasama. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, sir.
And I believe you're doing very well.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Great. So the NDC has accused you of conniving with the National Election Authority and the Electoral Commission to rig election 2020. I've seen you've responded, but coming to the details. But around this time when Ghanaians are thinking about coronavirus and its impact on the Ghanaian economy, should we be subjected to this kind of back and forth press conference about the need to compile a new voters register and not to?
Exactly, and that is what surprises us about the NDC's attitude to what is a national crisis. Like you said, this morning, the Ministry of Information put out the necessary information required for us to keep conducting ourselves well as far as COVID is concerned. And then at 2 o'clock, the NDC comes up with this ridiculous story. Of course, given the nature of the story, we have to respond, because not responding would give it credibility, whereas it is the most ridiculous thing they could have done.
But if you're responding, it means you're also getting to do the same thing that you believe is wrong that they're doing. And so in effect, we can't separate you from the NDC. We'd say all of you around this time that we should be focusing on dealing with coronavirus. You're politicking.
Mr. Amwa, the NPP as a political party must protect its reputation while supporting the government of the NPP to manage coronavirus. There's no doubt, and it's very clear, that the government is focused, thoroughly focused. If the NPP is seeking space, if the NDC is seeking space and is seeking to tag along and do something so that it will be noticed, it's important that the political party, which is the mother of the government, is in a position to respond. What is the issue? That the NPP will rig elections.
You have any such plans?
We all know that we have been told by the Supreme Court as far back as 2013 that no electoral commission rigs elections. If you will recall the long debates we had then about the register and about the capacity of the NDC to have rigged the election, the verdict of the Supreme Court was that the EC does not have power to rig an election because everything happens at polling station level. And once everything happens at polling station level, there isn't anything that a commission can do. So it is the vigilance of a political party at polling station level that determines all. We took the lessons on board, organized ourselves well, and in spite of the fact that the register was flawed in 2016, in spite of the fact that Jomama was the incumbent, we, out of opposition, organized ourselves so well with our messaging and our structures at polling station level that we beat an incumbent in Africa, an incumbent government, by over 1 million votes.
Almost 1 million.
A record.
Almost 1 million, yes.
1 million, give or take 2 votes.
Yes, not up to 1 million, but the point is this. Now, you've raised a point about how you're able to mobilize and win. But let's look at one thing here. The NDC is accusing you, and you've talked about a different form of rigging. They're accusing you of conniving with the National Identification Authority, with the Electoral Commission, to have some persons in certain regions who are sympathetic towards the NDC disenfranchised by the unavailability of their Ghana cards and hence their inability to register should the EC compel any voters register.
It is absolutely untrue. It's a false accusation, and it seeks to preempt the certain defeat of the NDC in this election 2020. We are running a new register. What is in the old 2012 register that makes the NDC so attached to it? In any event, if their beef is with the ID card, you have the Ghana card, you have a passport, and then you have the right for somebody who has already registered to vouch for you to register. So what's the problem with that?
Good. We're talking about what is in the old register that they are so attached to it. What is also wrong with the old register, which your party used to win by almost 1 million, that you wanted changed?
It didn't depend only on the register. It depended on our vigilance. That register is something that has been flawed from the start, since 2012. You remember that registers have been compiled virtually every 8 years. 92, 96, 204, 2012. And then in 2012, when there was advocacy for a new register with John Atamils in power, if you recall, may so rest in peace, we supported it and requested enhanced features. Unfortunately, thereafter, it turned out that people with NIA cards, national insurance cards, had used those cards as ID.
As a national health insurance card.
Exactly, to register, rendering the register doubtful because you didn't need rigor to acquire.
But the Supreme Court asked that their names be expunged from the register.
Was it done?
Which was done. The Electoral Commission went back to the Supreme Court.
It wasn't done.
They presented those names here. They presented those names based on their data, and based on the data available to them, they actually asked those persons to come back and they resubmitted that to the courts to say, we have gone ahead to do what you asked us to do.
It was a mess. It was a mess.
How do you know that was a mess?
Out of the 600,000 that was presumed to be on that register, how many were
Who presumed that it was 600,000?
No, the CRAB committee, those were the figures that were bandied about when the Charlotte Osei-led EC met the political parties at Alisa. 600,000 was the figure that came up as the register being bloated by. And how many did the EC take off? Less than 45,000. That register is doubtful. And it's not just the names. It is the voter management system itself, which is also obsolete. The voter management system is the electronic process in between the district offices of the EC. And now, if you will recall, during one of the registration exercises for the district assembly election, the MP for Elenble, who is the NDC, Amakufibua, threatened to take the EC to court because its voter management system had been unable to capture the details of nearly 500 of its constituents. Why? Because the machines are doubtful. The EC says the voter management system is obsolete. So the register is not just a compilation of names. It has a management system which is obsolete.
Okay.
So the EC is seeking to change that entire thing.
So you've talked about the need to change and all of that. Yes, I mean, this is a conversation we've been having for a very long time, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. We'll move to other areas, but picture it this way. If you are in opposition and you have the ruling party, the governing party, which while in opposition, advocated a new register, they come into power, the then electoral commission and its chairpersons had a lot of issues and they have had to be dismissed. The new persons who have come in, persons that you doubt, and these persons say, we are going to compile a new voters register. Something the same party which appointed these persons while in opposition were fighting for. Wouldn't you have issues?
You are casting all manner of...
No, I mean, I'll just simplify it for you. Wouldn't you have issues if you were in the NDC's shoes?
Listen, every political party has had issues over time, but those issues have been resolved with common interests and integrity. When a new register was being compiled before, parties in opposition have supported it. We supported the compilation of a new register during Rawlings' time. Right? John Mills supported in 2004. He didn't complain. In 2012, we supported and had it enhanced. We have since 2012 insisted that we have a new register. It is not a new position of ours. In opposition, one would have thought that the NDC would be interested in a credible register that will protect their interests. Why are they in opposition and still desperate to maintain an old register that was built over 8 years ago? Because normally the register is changed every 8 years. That's what we've seen so far, the cycle. Why are they still so attached to that particular register? What is in it that they've staked their electoral fortunes on? Short of believing that their candidate is not good enough, and therefore they will lose the election. But coming to the point that you said that we need to move from this discussion quickly. Now, even those debates are not necessary. They are ordeals. Ask me why. Because of the COVID environment.
Exactly, but talking about the COVID environment, your campaign manager for election 2020 raises an issue. He raises an issue about how the about 1 million persons who have turned 18 are going to vote if there's not, at least compilation of a limited voter register. So in effect, you're saying irrespective of what is happening, people must still vote and we must go and compile a register.
Okay. The NDC is creating a very disingenuous posture.
How?
They keep talking about the old register as if an old register is sitting there picked, ready to go. It's not the case. Assuming the EC doesn't compile an entirely new register, and they are going to deal with what they have now, including refurbishing the voter management system and refurbishing the existing register. One, they have to register over 1 million people who have turned 18. How will they do that?
Would you support that?
But I'm concluding the argument, and you realize that the NDC is backing up the wrong tree.
Okay, continue.
They will have to exhibit the register for the old ones on there to come and verify that they are still alive and they are still on there. These are all man-intensive, which means that whatever activity the EC does, it needs to protect us in a way, right? It must take account of COVID. It must take account of COVID. So the questions about cost and all those things don't even come in now. The question is, if the EC has to register over 1 million people and give them protective measures, those very same protective measures can help you to register another 10 million. So whatever system the EC devises now is as good as telling us that this is the best way I can deliver an election by 2012, December 2020, because the law doesn't allow us to go beyond that. So instead of obstructing the EC, instead of the NDC spinning tails because their candidate is poor, instead of trying to preempt their defeat, they should engage the EC. They should let the EC come up with a credible process that protects the entire society.
But they say the process the EC came up with when they met the eminent committee and other stakeholders, that they would allow the usage of the current voter's ID card. When the EC went to Parliament,
backwards.
When the
they
EC
are going pre-COVID.
No, they're saying when the EC went to Parliament, so they say they agreed. Because you said people could use the old register.
I am not in a position to answer for the EC.
No,
hold on.
I'm telling you what the NDC has said.
Yeah.
The NDC says they agreed. They were okay with the new register because the EC says people can use their old voter's ID. And then they go to Parliament and change that. Yes.
Where we are now, it is not an argument about old and new. It's an argument about whether it can even be done.
And you say it can be done.
And I'm saying that the political parties, in the interest of delivering an election to avoid a constitutional logjam, should support the EC. And I'm saying that whatever arrangements the EC puts in place, if it is capable of registering 1 million people in safety, should be capable by extension of registering 10 million people.
Let me get to Peter Tokuno.
In the event by September, the EC hasn't been enabled. The NDC doesn't support the EC to establish a register. Is the NDC prepared to breach the Constitution in December? Are they? Is that what they want to happen to this country?
Okay. Let me get to Peter Tokuno, who's Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, and he's joined us. Peter, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome, Wayne.
Great. So, Peter, now, the NPP says, you, NDC, you have a very bad candidate, and so you're doing everything possible just to make it look like, the NPP is trying to rig an election, and you're just making an excuse for your impending loss. What's your reaction to that?
First of all, thank you, Vincent, for having me. And it is very ludicrous for one to suggest that a party that is in opposition, that is advocating for the status quo to remain, the register that already existed to remain, is rather scared of elections. If the Akufo-Addo government thinks that they have performed very well, if the NPP think that they have pursued their programs and policies with all honesty and the people are satisfied with them, why are they so eager? Why are they so angry? Why are they so desirous of changing a register that they claim gave them a 1 million gap? I think that brings a million questions that needs to be answered. But let's go straight to the point, Winston. First of all, there have been contention about whether we compile a new voter register. We have raised the argument that the current register that we have, which is a biometric register, which captures our biometrics, which never change in one's lifetime. And even when you die, nobody can use your biometrics to do anything, less to even vote in an election. We have maintained that in 2015, the political parties at IPAC were drafted into a committee to develop reforms for the compilation of a permanent register. Now, these reforms, which was co-signed by representatives of the MPP, including Jimenez's IE, made recommendations to the electoral body, which is the Electoral Commission, to compile a permanent register, a register that will not require 8 years replacement, or that will not require replacement after every census. And that is what we did in 2012. We were able to get a very credible register. Along the line, we had a consensus with some some of the people who registered with health insurance card, Abu Ramadan versus the Republic. And there was a ruling that suggested that we take out the names of those who registered with National Health Insurance card. In actual fact, subsequent to that, a committee was set, which was headed by Justice BCIS Crab, to listen to the concerns of the MPP and President Akufo-Addo, requesting for a replacement of the permanent register just 4 years after the compilation. Then the committee met and recommended that we should go ahead and remove those who registered with the National Health Insurance card, which the Electoral Commission complied. So by that action, we had a very, very credible electoral register, which we used in the 2016 election. A register that won President Akufo-Addo.
Okay. So Peter, let me get to let me get to today's press conference. Now, you're accusing the National Identification Authority and the Electoral Commission, together with the government, of conniving to rig election 2020. What is the justification? What is the proof that this is the case, Peter Otokono?
Wilson, the justification is very clear, and that is what I was building. So you have President Akufo-Addo win election, and the first thing that he does was to sack Salotose and bring in Jim Mensah, a known a sympathizer of the MPP. If for nothing at all, I'm sure you are witnesses to the kind of engagements that we have had with her and the concerns we have had with her work at IEA. So everybody knew her position and her standing in terms of the political space. So you appoint her as electoral commissioner. And the first thing that
we know her as executive director for Institute of Economic Affairs. Go ahead.
Fair. And the first thing she does is to pursue President Akufo-Addo's long-standing desire to replace the register. Now, they have pursued it so much so that common sense and simple reasoning has been thrown to the dogs in this matter. What we have said is that if you have a problem with the system, and I heard Yabo Abiasama talking about VMS system, that is where the problem is. Does he really know what the VMS system is? The VMS system is a simple transmission system, how to transmit data. And they are using a VSAT system, which is a satellite system, the safest in the world by any standards. And they are saying that because sometimes weather problems, they are not able to transmit. They want to change the transmission system. Listen, what has the transmission system gotten to do with the data, the biometric data?
Yeah, so how are they conniving with the Electoral Commission and the National Identification Authority to rig elections?
So nothing, of that sort. The government is clearly in collusion with the Electoral Commission, and they are doing everything possible, to replace the register.
How?
And there are times where we met at IPAC, where we are discussing issues, and the government seems to know about things that the Electoral Commission is doing that other political parties do not know. Now, the clear case in evidence is the support of the government for the NIA registration during this COVID period. It became amply clear. In fact, when they started the NIA registration, you will recall that we took a position and we said, look, you cannot have a Ghana card when you are saying that the primary identification for you to register as a Ghanaian will not involve the most reliable and credible ID card that is already in
the Ghana card was suspended eventually. The registration was suspended. And you have raised some concerns. I just would want to take you to your document. This afternoon you presented at your press conference, you've talked about, how in the Upper West region, 94% of, those who register for the Ghana card do not have their Ghana card. But in the Ashanti region, 51% of them do not have it. In the Volta region, around 49% do not have it. How does that amount to a government seeking to deny persons in the NDC strongholds from registering?
Wilson, first of all, remember that the NIA is an institution that works under the office of the president. The president directly is responsible for the National Identification Authority. Every action and policy and program that they put in place is by direct blessing and by the direct vision of the president. When they started the registration, in fact, when they sent the National Identification Act to Parliament, we raised concerns why they have excluded the voter ID card from the process, because that was the most widely held identification document in the country. We didn't achieve any results. They continued with the registration. Now, they started the registration with 4,000 equipments. because the full complement of the equipment they had procured for the registration was not in. Now, what they did was that every single region that they went from the start, they used the 4,000 equipment for 3 or 2 regions at a go. They started in Accra. We saw a lot of people not able to register. My very good self, I was not able to register. I went to the registration center for 3 days. There are a lot of people who went to the registration center for several weeks who were not able to register. Most of them registered and they never got their cards. Subsequently, they moved the 4,000 equipment to the other regions, and all the regions, at most, what they did was that you have a whole electoral area. Usually outside Accra, electoral areas may have 50 polling stations, 60 polling stations, and so on and so forth. A whole electoral area will have one machine for 2 weeks.
But Peter, I mean, just before we continue, I want you to be specific with me here. So you're making a lot of deductions here, but I just want you to be very specific. What is it that the NIA and the Electoral Commission have done that tells you that they are conniving with government to rig the elections?
Exactly the point I was building, Winston. If you had allowed me, I would have just landed there.
Okay, wrap up on that one. Let me get to your Ababian somewhere.
Exactly. So you would realize that all the equipment they use in all those areas in the run-up to Ashanti region and Eastern region and even parts of the Western region, you realize that the equipments were limited. The period they stayed there was very limited because initially the thinking was not to use the Ghana card as an identification document to vote. You understand? And we spoke about this. I'm sure you also interviewed Professor Atifa some few months ago when they had the battle with the Electoral Commission. We sat at IPAC and we raised this concern that we have seen the NIA do something. Don't come in future and come and tell us that the NIA card will be used to register. Then they said, no, absolutely not. The system they are running is different. We can't use it. Only for us to go into this COVID period, no IPAC meeting, then we see the Electoral Commission present a document to Parliament.
But Peter, just before I come to you, Ababian Samoa, in your own press conference, the document that you presented, the Eastern region, about 68% of persons who registered for the NIA card or the Ghana card do not have them. In the Volta region, it is 56%. If this is anything to go by, doesn't it tell you that even in the so-called stronghold, a lot more people don't have it in your stronghold as NDC?
Listen, the point is very, very clear and must be made very loud that if you look at the voter turnout, let's consider the voter turnout for 2016 alone, not the entire registrable population, but the voter turnout. You will realize, compared to the number of people who registered for the Ghana card, averagely, most of the regions that have been registered, apart from Ashanti and Eastern region, have fallen short by over 35 to 40%. Voter turnout.
We're talking about percentage. That's what I've been telling you. But I mean, just hold on. Let me get to your Ababian somewhere too. So, well,
you a bunch of speculation adds up to a clear intent to rig an election. This is pure speculation, left, right, center. I am not going to answer for NIA, and I'm not going to answer for EC. But it is disingenuous to use percentages and try and create the impression that absolute numbers are not in the issue. The percentages, when turned into absolute numbers, will show you that they've defeated themselves in the argument that they are making. And you try to point it out to him. We cannot depend on speculation to destabilize the fight against COVID-19. If the NDC wants political attention, there are better ways of doing it. They can come up with constructive suggestions about how an electoral register can be compiled in a COVID environment. That is constructive. That is something that will help all of us. Whatever was being discussed pre-COVID has changed absolutely. Whatever was on the table that Otokono is desperately trying to rehash, that was on the table, has been changed. Because now, within COVID and post-COVID, and we don't even know what post-COVID looks like, it's very fluid, when post-COVID is or is not. Now the WHO is saying that it will be with us for some time, and so nations must begin engaging on how they will return back to the new normal with COVID in the background. So the question, the only question confronting political parties in Ghana now is how do you aid the EC to deliver an election on December 7, 2020, the last day that the Constitution allows the current government to stay in power without any breaks? At the center of that question is a register, because people must vote. Whichever register path you choose, whether you are compiling a new register or you are going back to the old one, you need to deal with people, human beings. How How do you deal with a mass of human beings so that you protect them, so that they avoid COVID, so that they are still alive in December to vote? That is the only question at stake. It has nothing to do with the things Otokono is talking about. It has absolutely nothing to do with the speculations about figures and voter turnout and all that. What it does have to do with is, are we going to be able to protect Ghanaians? And if we are, assuming the EC decides to do a limited registration, the number of people it will register and the protective mechanisms it will use can be extended to register as many other people. So we in the MPP, having pursued a new register for several years, are now saying that in the current situation, in the space that COVID affords us, we are willing to follow the EC and listen to what the EC intends to do, because we want to support the EC to succeed. That is what we are saying. And therefore, we have moved.
But you've always been advocating a new register, so it's not like your position.
We are also very sensitive to COVID. As we sit here, we've postponed our primaries. We are very sensitive to COVID. As we sit here, we've postponed our primaries, we've postponed the launch of our manifesto, we've postponed most of our political activities in respect for the strictures that COVID puts on us. So you cannot do anything now. You cannot plan anything now, particularly political activity in a traditional way. Traditionally in Ghana, we mobilize people, we bring ourselves together, we dance, we sing, we talk to each other, rallies. Everything we do politically, traditionally, is mass gathering.
Let's go for a final break. I mean, we'll come back to you, and then we'll continue right after this final break. I still have Yabo Abiyan-Samoah in studio with me. He's Communication Director of the NPP and Member of Parliament for Adenta. Peter Otokono is with us on Zoom. He's Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. We'll be right back. Welcome back from that final break. Still live here on UPfront on JoyNews channel with me, Winston Amwa. And my guest this evening is Yabo Abiyan-Samoah, who is the Communications Director of the NPP, and then Peter Otokono, who is Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, joining us via Zoom. So let me come back to you, Peter. Yabo Abiyan-Samoah has raised some concerns. He says, help the Electoral Commission deal with these issues. He says you're only diverting attention, and you need attention, and the fact that we have COVID-19 as a country to deal with.
Winston, first of all, don't allow Abiyan-Samoah to shift the goalpost, to change the topic that we are discussing. We are not discussing whether Electoral Commission can go ahead and observe, COVID-19, World of Organization protocols and all that. That's not the interest. That's not the gravamen of the discussion. The gravamen of the discussion is the collusion between the government, the NIA, and the Electoral Commission to disenfranchise close to about 10 million Ghanaians from voting. And that is the point that we are making. And that is the argument we must stick to. Now, we have made the argument, for example, that if you look at the number of Ghanaians who are holding the Ghana card today, which is just some 7 million, even compared to the 11 million people who have voted, if you are going to use the Ghana card as the primary identification document for anyone to register as a voter, then it means that you will be unfairly cutting close to about 8 to 10 million people, from the voting population. And that would be very unfair. That would be criminal, to say the least. That would be a deliberate ploy by government to reduce the votes in our strongholds, increase the votes in their strongholds, and just secure victory. Now, look at the scenario very clearly. 7 million people are those who have the Ghana card. Assuming that all of them go and register, assuming without admitting that all of them are above 18 and they go and register, you have only 7 million people who can show their card and register. You have 2 million people who have passports in this country. About 50% of them, let's assume, are adults, because passports are for children and anybody at any age. Let's assume that 1 million are those who are adults. The 1 million could be a subset of the 7 million that are already having the card. So ostensibly, if you are going to run a registration exercise for voters, you are looking at registering just a little over 7 million people out of a registrable population of about 19 million Ghanaians who are eligible to vote by the current population statistics. So if anybody is sitting somewhere and suggesting that we should keep quiet and support the Electoral Commission to disenfranchise close to 10 million people, that person must be joking. And we are not going to allow that to happen in this country. We raised the concern earlier on when before NIA started the registration. If they had allowed people who had the voter ID card, which is the most credible Ghana ID card before the Ghana card, to have gone forward with their voter ID card to register, that would have helped, even with all the challenges that confronted the registration.
Okay.
Now here we are, only few people have been registered. Just about 62% of the registrable population of this country are just those who have not been registered on the Ghana card. So you have some 38% of the registrable population who have the Ghana card. And now EC has sent a law to Parliament that only Ghana card and passport can be used as primary identification document for one to vote. And that cannot.
You can also have persons who have already registered vouch for you. You can also go to see commissioners of oath to swear an affidavit indicating your Ghanaianness. So it's just not these two, Peter.
Listen, even with the limited registration across the country and in our strongholds, what actually caused the problem and delayed the process, what actually even led the NIA to do the registration exercise for 2.5 months in Ashanti region, was that majority of the people were using the oath system. The oath system actually delays the process of registration. Here we are, we have even time challenges. We are supposed to use not less than 2 months to do mass registration across the country by every standard. If you are supposed to use 2 months and you have delayed your electoral calendar by almost 3 months, then it means that to employ the oath will even make your case worse. What the Electoral Commission has sent to Parliament will rather make it even difficult to meet their timelines. Listen, let me put this perspective for you to see. I mean, maybe Wabia someone may want to listen. He may not know the laws too much in terms of the electoral laws. The CI 91 tells you that you will need to inform political parties 21 days before the registration starts, which means that you will need to gazette the registration centers 21 days before the registration starts. Now, you have the case whereby the CI that is in Parliament will mature first week in June. When it matures, that is the only time that you can go and present your gazette and the registration centers for gazetting. When you gazette, you must give it to political parties by law, 21 days. So it means that you've got into the end of June. Now, if you want to do mass registration exercise, per the earlier program that they gave us, it was 45 days. But minimum, you need 2 months to do mass registration exercise across the country. That means that you need July and the entire August. The CI 91 states clearly that you will need to provide provisional register 90 days after the compilation of the voter register. Add 90 days to the end of August. Where are you? September, October, November. You understand? When you provide the provisional register, you will need 3 weeks to do nationwide exhibition. Add 3 weeks to November, middle of November, or maybe first week in November for the exhibition exercise. Where will it end you? After a 3 weeks registration exhibition exercise, you will need to present the concerns and the problems that are arise from the exhibition to the adjudication committee, which may take 2 weeks according to the CI 91. Now, after that, you have your certified register.
So Peter, can you hold on?
Second week in December.
Can you hold on? I'll get back to you. We need to be wrapping up. Let me get to you, Yabo Abiyansamoah. Yeah, so he's made.
I've read the rules as much as he has, and that is the reason why they must cooperate with the EC, because he says there's been a delay of 3 months. Why has there been the delay? What they refuse to confront, what the whole nation is confronting, why we shouldn't be doing what we are doing, COVID-19. That is why the delay. That is why this is the time for well-meaning Ghanaians to come together and support the EC in the decision that they will take. It is not MPP's fault that they have a bad candidate. MPP didn't elect John Mahama for the NDC. So at this stage, if you realize that John Mahama is losing out because Nana Addo is showing leadership and caring for Ghanaians, you can't turn the situation around and get us to focus on an old argument, an argument that has become odious in the context of COVID-19. They must accept that these are not normal times. And the new normal that is coming, whatever happens, including rules, not the constitution, but the rules that have been made, we must agree as a country to look at those rules carefully in order to have an election that must happen. So the enumeration of those days that Otokono is busily trying have been knocked out of the way by the reality of COVID.
Okay.
The NDC must accept and realize that the nation has to fight COVID.
In a minute, you need to be wrapping up.
This is not the time to be politicking. They are wasting the nation's time with this excessive politicking, which is based on old events before COVID. Okay. If they want to politic, they must focus on COVID and tell us how together we can get the EC to meet its constitutional obligation by 2020 December. Thank you very much. Otokono, finally.
This is a grand criminal scheme by the government to conduct voter suppression and gerrymandering to steal away the power of the people. And this must be resisted with every power the people can command. And I think that the point that we are, well-meaning Ghanaians, religious societies, civil society organizations, moral society, must rise to the occasion, because we have been set on the path of destruction. If we don't take care, our young, fragile democracy is going to be thrown away to the dogs because of somebody's insatiable desire for power, to hold on to power when they don't deserve it.
Thank you very much, Peter Boamo Otokono, who's the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. And of course, Yabo Abiyansama, thank you also. He's a Member of Parliament for Adenta and the Communications Director of the NPP. My name is Winston Amma. Thank you very much for joining us here on Upfront. Do have a lovely, lovely evening. Bye for now.